Over the last 6 months with Meta as an account rep, I've scaled and managed about $25 million in ad spend. And today I wanted to take this opportunity to share with you how I scale businesses personally to 250K plus per month using Facebook ads, minimizing burning of budgets and also reducing like the guesswork involved in scaling an account. Now, if you're a brand or business owner, you might be interested in this 4-step framework that took me to scaling 1,000 plus accounts. And if you don't know me already, my name is Z, and I now run a Facebook ads agency. And the reason why this isn't just another ads webinar is because, first of all, I have experience with Meta. I'm a former accounts rep and in the English market, including Australia and New Zealand. So I've managed over 1,000 plus accounts in 20 plus industries. So this includes e-commerce, tech, services, B2B healthcare, as well as some other industries. And in my first 2 months of going solo, I've added about 80K in total Shopify revenue for one client, and also have increased the revenue by about 8% for another client. So this is a system that is built across and works across like different verticals. The reason why I've built this is with the amount of accounts you're required to manage as a account rep, without a system to actually have these decisions made, it's very difficult to make sure that you're on track to hit your KPIs. And first of all, I want to share with you like the reason why most brands never scale. One of the reasons is that they don't know what stage of business they are actually in. Secondly, they copy strategies meant for completely different problems. So when they run into an issue, they go and outsource immediately, or if they go into Google, they try to find out if it's an audience issue or whatnot. And lastly, like their ads might be getting clicks, but these ads might be optimized for engagement, not necessarily getting them through conversions. So this is a little bit tricky because in some cases, what you actually want to do is instead of switching off an ad that has good engagement, is to try to refine like the call to action so that it ends up in the conversion funnel. I'll dive deeper into these topics. So what I can promise you is by the end of today's video, you will be able to get clarity on whether you should be under the recover, maintain, or scale stage of your business. A plug and play ROAS break-even formula to make sure that you can set some safe zone thresholds to know when it's a good time to scale, when to not, and the exact steps to scale with control and not chaos, most importantly. Now, this is the IRMS framework. So this is just an acronym I've created for myself. And essentially the first stage is to actually identify what exactly is going on with your ROAS and what exactly is safe to scale, when we should be pulling back budget instead. And after identification, we can categorize ourselves into each of these 3 categories. First, recover, so that we can address the bleeding profit margins. And second of all, we can maintain. So in some cases that you want to be maintaining your performance instead of scaling or decreasing is, for example, if you're expecting like new shipment to be coming in, or let's say like you forgot to order from your suppliers in China and you're trying to make use of the stock over a duration. So in this case, you want to try to keep the performance instead of trying to scale or trying to pull back. And lastly, scaling. So let's say if we're in a very safe zone where we get consistent performance over 7 to 14 days, depending on your risk aversion or depending on your risk tolerance, you can start implementing the right system for growth. And with this comes systematic scaling. So this is very important because you will actually know like the exact numbers of when to scale and when to pull back. And the most important part as an entrepreneur or a business owner is that you want to be making decisions based off of logic and not emotion. So when you have, for example, calculated and put it on a spreadsheet, hey, this is 1.8 ROAS. If we get 1.8 ROAS over a period of time, that's when we pull back. Or let's say like any 7 to 14 day performance where our ROAS is above 2.2. That's why we're going to scale. Like when we have these numbers very, very clearly in our head, it wouldn't mess with us and our decision-making process and the other parts of the business that can affect the top line revenue. And I have seen so many cases during my time with Facebook that businesses are spending a lot of money and they are assigned to me, and what actually happens is that their business is not even profitable. Like their ROAS maybe is like 2 to 2.5. Of course, it depends, right? So we have to make use of the ROAS calculator. But after their variable costs, which includes the COGS and shipping and inclusion of their fixed costs, for example, rental for a specific amount of space, or for example, some other overheads, they're actually not taking home any revenue or profit, and they're just working for free. The first question I ask them, do you enjoy doing this for charity, or are you that much into the cause of the business that you're not actually taking home money? And these businesses, what I've seen a pattern of with their business owners is that they end up making very emotional decisions, and they try to find external issues to attribute to the fact that they are not making money. They'll blame their marketers, or let's say if they give me a call or give my colleagues a call, they actually tell them, hey, like we need this amount of ROAS, like your ads are not working, please fix it. And they think that we have a magical button that we can click so that we can generate money for them, but that's not how it works. Like when I was with Meta, we are very strategic and tactical based on ads manager only, and it's a separate issue. But let's firstly take a look at the break-even ROAS as well as the key drivers that will help us with our business. So this is the calculator and the template I have basically modified from one of the coaching groups. And you can fill in the data by yourself, but essentially there are like different variable costs. For example, if you're doing 3PL for your service delivery, transaction fees on Shopify. And before we go into some of these variables, let's actually define like what exactly is break-even ROAS. So break-even ROAS is the point where your revenue from ads is equal to your costs, no profit, no loss. And this ROAS will be the break-even ROAS value. And why is this so important is, like I mentioned, like it helps you make smart data-driven decisions so that you know when to scale or cut back. And a few bad days sometimes, like it might look scary. However, you could be still in the green overall. And this is something that I have to even remind myself. Over the last week, a brand that usually gets about over 2K in revenue, one of the days it got like 4.5, and the rest of them were like 1+, and it looked really scary. So when I took a look at the data over the week, we're still in the green, and we're still more profitable compared to the week prior. So this actually really helps with you staying calm, collected, so that you can move the other parts of the businesses forward. So how do you actually calculate break-even ROAS? Break-even ROAS is essentially 1 divided by your profit margin. So for example, if the profit margin of your business is 25%, your break-even ROAS is 1 divided by 0.25, which is 4. Just throwing it out of the blue, you can have, for example, a safe zone threshold of 3.8 to scale downwards and 4.2 to scale upwards. And profit margin is not always stagnant because it also accounts for fixed costs. And fixed costs only get smaller as your overall revenue goes bigger. That is why, like, even though I calculate the fixed costs using the past 90 days, this is so that we can get the most accurate and relevant snapshot. We also want to draw an example of, for example, how ROAS alone doesn't tell the full story. So in this case, you can have a look. So high scale, business spending 10K in ads, 25K in revenue, 2.5 ROAS, right? So this is not as good. ROAS and profit margin is about 40%. You get about 10K in absolute profit, whereas a business only spending 6K in ads, 18K in revenue, and their ROAS is 3. Similar profit margin, they only make about 7.2K in profit. Just so that we're clear, even though we're using 40% profit margin for both the high scale and the low scale accounts, the account with high scale should have a higher profit margin because their fixed cost stays the same while their overall revenue goes up. So it's a smaller percentage of the overall revenue. And if you're wondering what exactly is a healthy profit margin for e-commerce, if you're wanting to track everything very diligently, a healthy profit margin ranges around 30 to 50%. And this is for e-commerce. So if you're doing a retail and you're transitioning to e-commerce, this will only account for the e-commerce portion. And direct to consumer brands often have even higher profit margins so that you can have more ad spend to work with. So if you want to have a look at the ROAS calculator right here, you have to take in the Shopify revenue, number of orders over the last 90 days, average order value, and some of the other costs here are basically attributed to fixed costs that are totaled up in this formula to get you the fixed and the average costs per order in terms of expenses. And in most cases, break-even ROAS I've seen for my clients is about 2 to 3. There are of course outliers, and some of the clients, for example, in the luxury goods space, as well as furniture, their ROAS can basically dramatically change with just 1 or 2 additional purchases that are coming in for $8,000 or $10,000. So in this scenario, even though the break-even ROAS calculator still works, we want to perhaps set a longer time period. For example, let's say if performance is stable or is in the green threshold for about 2 weeks to 3 weeks, then we scale the ad account budget. If you want a copy of the break-even ROAS calculator, feel free to DM me at zchowx on Instagram, and I'll send you a copy so you can play with the numbers yourself. The next, we want to take a look at the first stage. So the recover stage. How exactly should we rebuild from rock bottom? And everything sucks. So the good thing is there's only opportunity for improvements. Usually for accounts that come in and they're in this stage, what I generally do is I tell them we can just scrap everything and we want to test from the start. Of course, you want to analyze the historical performances of different ideas or angles that they've tested before. But essentially, you want to scrap the messy campaigns, create a campaign structure from scratch, and perhaps strip it down to 1 to 2 hero products. And this is very beneficial for the operational side of the business as well. In terms of hero products, you can have a look at the last half a year for the 2 best sellers, and you want to try like different angles on those. Because if those aren't able to have a consistent result from your ads over a period of time, there's no point in always having and churning new products. And most of the time of the entrepreneur or business owner will be spent in the laboratory instead of actually making money. So we want a proof of concept that works. And very importantly is to rebuild with clean creatives. So the reason why creatives is so important is, as you might remember as well, back in iOS 14.5, what happened was that there was this like button, ask app not to track before. Whenever you click onto Facebook, there is a button called ask app not to track. And essentially our tracking from Facebook's end is a lot weaker than before. So what this means and what this entailed was that interest keyword strength went down significantly, and people leverage more custom audiences. And what Facebook decided to do was actually experiment with AI. The AI model today, whether you like it or not, with the shopping campaign, Advantage Plus sales, that is a completely different topic. But essentially since then, a lot of the targeting is based on creative. So with the ad algos evolution, which I can cover in a separate topic, creatives will be a very big focus moving forward. And that is why you see a lot of the video content is actually starting to pick up purchases a lot better than static. Of course, there are downsides. For example, for video content, they churn out very quickly compared to static ads where you can run them for a very long time. Whereas for video, even if they work over time, you might have to turn them off for a period of time for it to reset with the customers. And lastly, we want to test like creatives, copy, and structure. So one of the basic structures that you guys I recommend to go for is 3-2-2. So one ad set with 3 creatives, 2 different copies, and 2 headlines. And there is no point in scaling if there's nothing worth scaling. So even though it might be a painful process to actually start from scratch, I've done it a bunch of different times. Once you pull the band-aid off, you'll feel a lot better. And next, the maintain stage. So don't touch what's working. And in some cases, you wouldn't want to be scaling as well. For example, if you're new in the business and your supplier is from China, you've basically forecasted a specific amount of stock required for a period of time. You buy the stock and they ended up selling out very quickly during the first part of the period. And what happened is that, for example, closer to February when there's Chinese New Year, their supplier isn't able or working to be able to ship out another batch of stock. So with these like missed forecasts, what you want to do is actually to maintain instead of scaling, even though we're very profitable. Because the last thing that we want is for an account to go super green and then have a very drastic drop in performance, and that doesn't give a good signal to the ad sets or the campaign structure on Facebook. So what you want to be really tracking is frequency, fatigue, and consistency. You still want to be adjusting the budget, but only reallocating between performing and underperforming ones. And in this case where, let's say, we are really tight on the stock left, in this example, what we can do as well is perhaps cut out 20% of the budget for controlled testing so that once we're able to order more stock, we're actually able to thrive and move forward, scale very quickly with already a new angle in mind. And the last part, the funnest part, and also the most scary part is scaling the ad spend of the account to actually start printing money. So the first thing that we want to keep in mind is we want to be looking at MBR, not just platform ROAS on Facebook. Even though I come from a Facebook ads background, I want to highlight that the attribution sometimes is not super accurate. The reason for this is a lot based on correlation and not causation. For example, someone sees the ad on Facebook, that triggers a 1-day view. And subsequently, let's say if they are traveling and they're not purchasing on their phone, they are more comfortable purchasing on their laptop or later on when they're at home, they might Google the brand later to pick up the purchase from Google's end. And with this in mind, when you're actually looking at the bigger picture of yourself as a business, how we are able to make profit, we want to be making sure that our MER is good and not just our Facebook ROAS is good and our Google ROAS is good, but our overall MER might not be so good. And scaling also involves a lot of testing because whenever you're not testing, you're giving the opportunity for competitors to come up with like different angles to be ahead of the game. And when you're a follower, let's say if someone else runs a marketing angle that you've not done before for your product, their accounts might be incentivized to push more spend already. And the ad auction would prioritize their accounts because they've been running the ad campaigns for a longer period of time. So testing is very crucial. And in terms of the numbers of how much you guys should be scaling, it really depends on your risk tolerance. I've seen businesses where they want to be safer, and I generally try to stay safer because end of the day, I'm running an agency, right? So I want to keep the clients for as long as possible. I want to do a risk adverse strategy of about 10 to 20% of ad spend scale every 7 to 14 days. Let's say if they are in the scale threshold after the ROAS calculator is involved. And lastly, of course, the most important part. And lastly, this is one of the important parts as well, using warm retargeting and also LTV strategies. So, for example, even shipping a product, you can involve some sort of like discount code or offer that says, hey, if you bought from us, thank you so much. We're going to extend a free gift for yourself or a friend if you want to hand them that card. So this is one way that you can actually get a bundle deal and also additional purchases with each purchase. So this is less of Facebook, but LTV strategies are equally as important on site. And if you can push these website LTV offers on your Facebook ads, that can increase our overall revenue as well. And I've seen real world cases, right? That 1 month they're doing 60K and on the next they're doing 150K without killing the funnel. So just want to end this off with scaling fails, the cost of guesswork. And the most common mistakes that kill scaling accounts is if you increase the budget too quickly without having a good hypothesis of why the performance was good for the last 2 weeks. Not knowing break-even ROAS is the obvious one. Next would be testing too much when you should really be stabilizing and in the maintain stage. And lastly, chasing trends instead of solving your customer's actual problem. So this is a debatable topic, especially with people in the e-commerce space doing dropshipping. I want to say that this isn't a binary, so never chase trends. However, in most cases, if you're trying to build a brand for longer term value, focus on what you're actually trying to solve, have a clean structure for your campaigns, and work towards that every day to improve the MER. And with your newfound knowledge with the 4-step IRMS framework, if you're a brand or business owner, I urge you to have a look at the calculator, punch in some numbers, figure out exactly what the values are for recovery, maintain, and scaling. And once you have the system set in place, it'll be a lot easier for you to make decisions on the ad account without having to refresh your feed every once in a while on Ads Manager and making emotional decisions, for example, turning off a campaign too early or putting in budget on an ad that only has been live for about a day or two. And it can really be this simple. After all, ads are just a small piece of the big math problem. I'm pretty confident that if you're able to set and create structure for the exact values when to recover, when to maintain, and when to scale your business, if you're able to push out good creatives, target the right people, you should be able to scale to 250K plus per month and not lose momentum or have it be a temporary thing. Now, if you have a question on the presentation or anything related to Facebook or Meta ads, feel free to DM me on IG at zchowx.